Yeah, but I'm not going to. So, this is the first episode of the Joshua Smith Stopping Runaway Climate Change podcast. And this is my first guest on my first episode, David Smith, in other words, my dad. Just to introduce you a bit about my dad. My dad is was a world record wheelie holder, a skydiver, a adrenaline junkie fanatic, a scuba diver, a champion bodybuilder back in his day.
No, champion superstar fitness.
Superstar fitness back in the day.
Didn't win anything for bodybuilding.
Okay. Well, that show's level. And right, that kicks off our podcast. So, where would you like to start your story? Because you've got a lot to talk about, really, haven't you?
Well, this 1 year ago, this month, on the 5th of June, I had a terrible skydiving accident, and I've been in hospital a lot, and had a lot of time to reflect on my life. So
just talk to me, not the camera now. So this.
I've thought of all the instances where I've been looking at imminent death, expecting to be the end at any moment, and I've counted them up through all my motorbike. As a young teenager, I was a boy racer, king of the road hooligan, everywhere on full throttle, and had lots of altercations with cars, pulling out from side streets and turning right while I was overtaking them. Every 12 months I had another plaster cast on or a broken leg on crutches, so I'm really quite an expert on crutches.
I really enjoy that story. I don't know where the car pulls out on you and you jump off the motorbike.
Oh, that was my first serious high-speed accident. A car turned across, an oncoming car made a right turn, and I was coming along a beautiful tree glen road at about 100 mile an hour, or admitted now speeding, and just at the last moment the car turned in front of me, and it was an imminent impact. I couldn't avoid it. The only thing I could do to avoid impacting the car, which would have been tremendous G-forces and that have been killed outright, was to leap off the bike into the air above, and I did a somersault over the roof of the car at 100 mile an hour.
How do you leap? So how do you leap off a motorbike over a car though? You can't just.
Well, first reaction was to put the brakes on, so I locked both the front and the back brakes up, and I maybe reduced my speed to 80 mile an hour before impact, but it was definitely going to be a high impact, and I couldn't sustain it. I had to get off that bike. So my feet were on the footrests firmly, my hands were on the handlebars firmly. I was fit and agile at 18 years of age. I just jumped as hard as I could into the air, pushing down on the handlebars, pushing down on the foot pegs, and became airborne and missed the car in entirety. But it put me into a forward somersault. And what happened was, as my body was spinning, the centrifugal forces forced my helmet up, and the full face bit that was on the chin piece was across my eyes, and I couldn't see a thing. And I knew that there was steel reinforced concrete lampposts along the road at the curb's edge, and I was flying through the air at 80 miles an hour, and I couldn't see where I was going. I thought, God, I hope I don't hit one of these lampposts while I'm flying through the air. It did cut me in half. But as I came over, I managed to pull my helmet down, and I could see I was still going on a straight line, parallel with the curb, missing the lamppost. And I came to a stop. There's a block of 10 tourist houses there, and I landed on my feet and then skid along with my elbows and knees at the end of the 10th house away from the junction. So it brought my speed gradually over about 150 feet, so I wasn't impacting the high G-forces. So all I did was I got 10 broken bones in my 5 metatarsals, and both my feet were all broken. And whether it was caught on the handlebars as I was leaping off, or whether it was impacting the road because I landed on my feet, I never know, but I just know that they were all broken. to my list of many breaks. I counted up when I was 22 years of age that I had 22 breaks. The first most painful break was when I crashed my bogie. This is a little wooden truck made out of pram wheels. And
I remember this story. This is a gruesome story, this. Go on.
I built my own bogie and I devised my own braking system, which was a hinged piece which I leaned back on with a cross piece which was spring loaded. So when I leaned back and pushed it against the tyres, and I could control my speed braking. Now on the farm, all the hills are dirt tracks, but Thorpe Estate was being built at the time, and they put Howard Drive in before they built the houses, and it's a tarmac road, quite a steep hill. So I was drawn to it like a fire to a jump pot. At 13, I had the need for speed. So I came down this hill a bit faster and a bit faster and a bit faster until it had solid rubber tyres on, pram wheels. On the bend, the right hand bend at the bottom, it lost traction. And even though I steered away from a parked transit van, I still went underneath the van, underneath the front bumper. And my front wheel, my bogie hit the front left wheel of the van, which pushed my foot back, which raised my knee, which impacted the front bumper of the van, and all the kinetic energy of my mass moving was stopped instantly, and it's transferred through my thigh into my hip joint, and it smashed my hip socket.
Oh.
And I screamed. I'd never felt pain like it. It must have been quite an anxious scream because people started coming out of the houses from all around, wondering what was happening. And I was insisting that nobody touched me, nobody moved me. You wouldn't let them move my legs. Ambulance arrived soon, and they picked me up. They must have sedated me a bit, some with something, and managed to get me on the stretcher without moving me and took me to hospital, where I had to wait 4 hours before I could be given an anaesthetic, because I've just had my Sunday dinner, and you've got to have an empty stomach for an anaesthetic. And when I came to, I had a plaster cast on
Open the window.
from my right ankle up to my armpits, and I had my leg in traction also with weights and pulleys. And there was a hole at the back for bedpan use and a flap at the front. And at that age, I was too embarrassed for any of the nurses to see me. So the only time I would go on the bedpan was when my mum came to visit me. And I had to tell her to step gently on the floor because the footsteps were vibrating through the floorboards in the ward up through the bed and causing vibrations which were too much pain. So she had to sort of somehow get me rigid from my ankle to my armpits onto a bedpan for me to go. It's not a good experience, is it?
You've had a lot of experiences in the hospitals, haven't you?
There's too many to mention. Starting when I was born with a hole in the heart, patent ductus arteriosus. And then when I was 3, I contracted polio, which has left me permanently crippled. But I was very lucky to get polio because it was only after, when I had a thorough medical examination, that they discovered the hole in the heart. Had that not been fixed, then my life expectancy would have only been to 20 years of age, or not further. So, going through all the crashes and all my adrenaline sports and all the accidents, and there's been 22 instances of experiences of expecting imminent death, which is more than a cat has 9 lives. So I've called my autobiography 2.5 Cats. How can you have half a cat? Well, it get people questioning, maybe they'll take an interest and read it. I'm also hoping to raise funds for the Great North Ambulance Service. And without their service, I wouldn't be here. I would be writing my autobiography. So, you've got a bike licence, haven't you? You've done a bit of motorbiking.
I have. I didn't have any crazy crashes like you. I seem to learn my lesson pretty quickly. And I did have one major crash, which you know about, in 2013, was it? I think it's 2013.
You overtook a car while it was turning right. I've done that.
Yeah.
And it
And-
knocked you off, yeah.
Yeah, it knocked me off, yeah. And I got that was on my 125 learner motorbike, 125 cc's. And I spent a year without any motorbike or transport, and then went straight onto, after I passed the test, I went straight onto 500cc. 500cc Honda 500 Twin, and I was scared for my life riding that bike. So I decided that I wasn't gonna drive it with any speed in anywhere that a car could pull out on me. Because cars do pull out on you when you're driving a motorbike, and I decided I was going to be driving. Only drive as fast as so that I could come to a stop if someone did pull out on me. So I found myself doing 25 miles an hour
Yeah.
most places. But then as soon as I got onto the tops, I just
I remember having that theory when I was a teenager. I decided to, when I was going round country lanes with bends, I didn't go around any bend faster than the length of roadway I could see clear in front of me that I could stop. So if there was a parked car or a truck or a pile of sand in the road and I'm going round a blind bend scratching the foot rags, I would only go around fast enough so that I could stop in the distance of the road I could see clear ahead. And then I realised there could be another motorbike coming the other way around the bend, and we're both observing the section of road that's clear that we can stop in, but we can't. By the time we see the motorbike, that section of road is already halfway across it, and I'm halfway across his, and there'd be a collision, wouldn't there? So that theory doesn't always work, does it? There's always the unexpected.
no. So this motorbike crash, then when you flew over the car, did that happen more than once? That I think I remember.
Well, I got took to A&E, and of course my mum and dad came to visit me, and every time they visited me, they wanted me to give up motorbikes because the crashes were getting, well, there were at least one a year, you know. So 3 years down the line, I got in 1975 when I was 20 years old. I had a crash, and I managed to convince my dad that it's not the motorbikes that are dangerous, it's the cars. And so I said, if I get a trials bike which is not road registered and ride it in trials competitions, I could get a 250cc Montesa trials bike. Which
You told me a story when I was younger about the same thing happening to you on a motorway, where you're going at an ungodly speed and a car pulled in front of you, and you jumped off the bike over the car.
That was a tank slapper. Wobbler.
A tank. Oh, was it? So tell that then, because I wanna.
Well, I did get another road bike later on, but my dad said it was limited to 250ccs. He didn't want me to get a big, powerful, fast big one. And the Honda 250 was a twin-cylinder bike. But and then I had a 500 Honda, which is a 4-cylinder, and then I had a 750 which is 4-cylinder. But Honda just bought a new model out, a 500 twin. So I ordered one from Robinson's in Rochdale, but I said, I want you to put 250 badges on the sides of it because it's a twin and it doesn't look that much different than the 250, and my dad will think it's a 250 then. So I got a 500 Honda with 250 stickers on it. Of course, all the other bikers knew that it was a CB500 twin, but my dad didn't. So I managed to get away with it.
Oh God.
And it was that one I was riding. Now it only had a single down tube frame at the front, and the frame wasn't as rigid as it could be with a proper cradle frame, and it tended to flex a bit. And at speed, you get the wind coming round your body, and it can create eddies. Like if you run your finger through a some water, you'll see little whirlpools either side of it. Well, the wind can go around your left shoulder and then your right shoulder, and it can go alternate, which can create vacuums, which can put you into a bit of a wobble, a slight wobble. But then, like a child on a swing, if you push it with one finger, you only move it an inch. But if you get it timed right and keep pushing when it's going forward, the child will swing bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, that's called the fundamental mode of oscillation. The oscillating air eddies around my shoulders must have matched the frequency of vibration of the twisting of the frame, which was about 10 vibrations per second, like that. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And the next year, my handlebars were going, and I was super strong.
You're not slowing down when this was happening?
When I tried to slow down, it put more weight on the front end and the vibration went worse. I was on full throttle on the M62, slightly downhill, at 124 mile an hour on the speedo. There might be a slight error there, maybe not quite that fast. And I looked in my wing mirror, and there was a Scimitar 3 litre GTE, which was a quite big car from that day, right behind me. So I moved over, because he wanted to overtake. His car was faster than my bike. He was speeding as well. And as he went past, I moved into his slipstream to get a bit of vacuum, to get a bit more speed to pass him. But this is when the tank slapper started, when I was following him in his slipstream. And I was holding handlebars as tight as I could, pushing them both forward as hard as I could. And I could do 360 pound bench presses at the time, so I was pretty strong. And I even braced my elbows against.
Do you know what that is in
knees.
kilograms?
2.2 kilograms, so 360, it'd be about 170 kilograms.
Right, okay. What are you saying?
I braced my elbows against my knees to try and hold it, and still couldn't hold it, and it was getting worse and worse. So my only option was to get off the bike. Actually, it got that bad, it was going from steering lock to steering lock, steering lock to steering lock. The front wheel was going 45 degrees that way, 45 that way. It was going about 10 times a second. I don't know whether I leapt off the back or whether I was thrown off the back, but I leapt up into the air and I landed on my front. The bike just slid on its side, loads of sparks showering off it, sliding down the fast lane of the motorway. I'm sliding on my elbows and knees, which was a tremendous amount of braking grip. I was stopping a lot faster than the bike was. It was sliding away in the distance. And I was worried about another speeding car behind me in the fast lane, or a truck, or anything. And that was what was going through my mind. I've got to get off this road. And as I was coming to a stop, which was a lot of grip and a stop, I went into a right-hand roll onto the grass at the Central Reservation, jumped up, looked round, nothing coming. Thank God for that. And I looked down the road, and my bike was still sliding down the road with loads of sparks on it. At this point, I hadn't felt any pain at all. It was pure adrenaline. And I sat down on the arm court, and then I felt some pain coming in. And I couldn't stand up again, I couldn't move after that. And I didn't break a single bone in that crash. First of all, when I fell off, I was tumbling over and over. And I felt, if you can imagine being a little spider inside a matchbox, shaking it about, hitting all the 6 sides. I didn't know which way I was up or down. I was tumbling over that fast. I was being battered on all sides. And then I ended up with my front sliding down.
Would you like me to get you a cup of tea or coffee and I can pause this and we'll come out back?
No, thanks. I had plenty of brews today.
I'm going to grab myself one. I'm going to pause this and we're going to come straight back to it. And we're back. Just getting some refreshments. So you was telling your stories, plural, about your motorbike crash
spilt coffee on yourself.
Yeah.
Well, rather that than spill it on the settee,
Yeah, I guess so.
you can throw your clothes in the washer, can't you?
Right, well, you was telling your stories.
Well, I didn't break any bones with that crash, but I had severe multiple lacerations. Skin missing off my elbows and knees, and my belt buckle took a chunk out the side of my tummy. And all these crashes, by the way, and there were many of them, I never got a single scratch on my helmet. I was agile enough to keep my head off the floor. So that's quite good, isn't it?
Is that not just like a little bit of luck?
It could be. A little bit of luck. Well, I've had more than a little bit of luck. I've had a lot of luck all my life. I've been lucky. In fact, my autobiography has started by calling it My Lucky Life, but 2.5 sounds better.
It does.
That was Paul Evans' suggestion, the vet.
You have to give him some credit, won't you?
So everybody should have a dream that they can passionately believe in, and if they can achieve this dream, then it will give them a sense of fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a bad introduction, and I've had ambitions that I've been lucky enough to fulfill. So I've had a great sense of achievement in my life. I've been lucky. And there's just 2 minutes to talk about, really. 2 minutes to mention.
We've got lots of time.
Well, when I was 11 years old, we were making matchstick models, me and my brother. And he started a model of the Blackpool Tower. And it collapsed when it got about a foot high. It fell over. And I looked at it with interest and I thought, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's got to be triangulated and properly braced. You know, even I knew that. He said, no, it can't be done. So I said, I'm going to do it. And I started building a slightly smaller model. His was too big and it was too flimsy and it was falling off. And I braced it with diagonals, cross members. 2 years later, when I was 13, I'd completed a 4-foot model. And it was such a good likeness to Blackpool Tower that my dad phoned the local Oldham Chronicle office and they came down with a photographer, and I got a picture in the newspaper with an article about this, and I realised I knew I could do it when I was 11. It took 2 years to do it, and from that moment on it was like a light bulb moment, and I realised if I put my mind to it, anything I want to do, I can do it. So that's been the motto all my life. If I can conceive it and believe it, I can achieve it. Anybody can.
I think you've passed that on to me, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you've had some good advice over through your lifetime. You said your dyslexic teacher told you something, that you believed in the law of attraction. Yeah.
I did, yeah.
Well, that's true.
I think it's true a certain amount, but I don't think it's true in the way that I used to think it was.
Birds of a feather flock together. That's an old proverb. Like-minded people get on with each other.
I heard that you make an average of your top 5 friends' salaries, incomes. So if you hang around with a load of entrepreneurs and businessmen, you will become more business-minded and entrepreneur-minded. If you hang around full of losers who aren't doing anything, you'll become more like them.
You will become whatever you think about.
But what are you going to be thinking about when you
Well, this is why it's such an amazing concept, because the only thing that anybody ever has full control over are their own personal thoughts, and we always do choose them, consciously or not. So if you can consciously choose your personal thoughts about what you would like to achieve and what your ambitions are, then you will become that person.
So this is something I believe very strongly. A few years ago, I started consciously deciding what thoughts I was banning from my mind and what thoughts I was going to practice on a daily basis. I banned any kind of critical dissent of myself and other people as well. Not just because I realised that criticising, is like criticism is like a poison. All it does is damage. It damages yourself. You do it to yourself. It damages other people, and you do it to them. So I decided that criticism out.
Yeah.
I started practicing.
Open your mind to forgiveness.
I started practicing gratitude for what I've already got, and affirmations, positive statements about myself. To choose
personal positive affirmations.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, there's a book by Louise Hay on that, which I've read. And the first book that I lent you was by Dale Carnegie, and it was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
I read that last year.
And it's full of good tips on how to be successful, to get on with people.
I read it last year.
You read it years ago.
I read it properly.
Read it again.
I read it cover to cover last year. I was in during my time in Insulate Britain. I spent a lot of time in police cells, and we went out blocking the road. You know all this, but we went out blocking the road every 2 days, and then we get arrested, and then we'd spend a day in a police cell. And I got to take my book into the police cell, so I was bringing that book with me. And every day I was reading it and practicing it, and I was practicing the principles from that book on the detention officers.
So many people don't have a chance. They might be born with a disability or dyslexia, as in you and my case. I didn't know I was dyslexic. When I was 11 years old, when we come to take our 11 plus exam, I didn't realise that I couldn't read and write, and I didn't answer a single question. I was all hot and flummoxed and embarrassed because my dad said how important it was to get to grammar school and you must pass your 11 plus. And but if you've got the right mindset, you can overcompensate for your disabilities and still become a great achiever. A lot of great achievers turn out to be dyslexic because they've no choice. They've got to compensate for it. They've got to get round it. They've got to be intuitive and inventive and discover and think more ways. If you've got everything you want, then you don't have to strive for anything else. And it's striving for something that you believe in that makes you strong and successful.
Yeah, well, I'm a strong believer that. See, I got this kind of mindset from listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, the number one podcast in the world, and everyone knows who that is mainly. And he says you should want to do hard things, because when you do hard things, you become stronger, you become better, you become more confident in yourself when you overcome these hard things. People want to have an easy life, right? But if you have an easy life, if you do what's easy, your life will be hard. General life will be hard. But if you do what is hard, if you take on difficult tasks and difficult challenges...
Well, you've got to do the things that have to be done when they need to be done. And if you can sort them out, then you'll be able to use your time to do what you want to do. And you can choose what you want to do, and you can choose who you want to be.
I'd like to hear some more of these motorbike crash stories, because you've got a lot of stories to go through, and we've never had a chance to capture them on film. And I'd like to capture your motorbike crashes and your sailing experience and
Well, on crashes, let's say that one of my ambitions was to get a big fast sports car. E-Type Jag.
And that was another.
E-Type Jag was a thing to have. It had a big V12 engine and a long bonnet, and it's what every He-Man boy racer wanted. And until I saw a Corvette. Bloody hell, I thought that looks good. It looks better than an E-Type. And it's got a V8 7.5 litre engine in it. It's twice as big. So I set my mind on getting a Corvette. Now I've got
What model of Corvette?
It was 1979 L. There was an L82 and an L48. I can't remember which it was. It was the first one with a sloping rear windscreen.
Was it a Stingray?
The Stingray was the very early model. That was the big muscle car. The one I got was a more modern one, which is not as much brake horsepower. And of course, it had to be fitted with a catalytic converter for pollution. Even in 1979, the Americans had pollution nailed. They wanted to cut down emissions. They had smog over Los Angeles, where you couldn't see over the city from the mountains because that much exhaust fumes in the air. So anyway, this car, my friend who I visited on a number of occasions lived in California because he worked on an aircraft contract for McDonnell Douglas. He left school and gone to work at Hawker Siddeley's, which used to be Avros, and then Hawker Siddeley's, and then British Aerospace, and he got trained in specialist carbon fibre, so he got this contract, and I went to visit him on a number of bases. And this one year, he bought a Corvette, and he picked me up from the airport in it. So I took my life savings, and I've always been a meticulous saver, not wasting money, wanting to value it and get things I value. And I bought a second-hand one, which was only a few months old, but it was like mint, it was like new. And I drove it 7,000 miles in the States. First of all, I went all around Utah and Arizona and California and Nevada, and then I went coast to coast to New York, shipped it over to Liverpool, and got a personal import on it. So it was cheaper than buying one from a dealer because I'd picked a good one, which had been on a sunshine state. It had not been driven on salty, icy, cold, rusting roads that the vehicles at home were falling apart with rust. Anyway, it's got a fiberglass body on it, so it doesn't rust on the body, but the chassis was good. And I got quite good at driving that. I used to take it to drag race meetings. I went to drag race meetings with my motocrosser and my trials bike and did demonstrations of wheelies in front of 10, 12,000 people. And 10 minutes work, I got 100 quid, which was a lot of money in those days.
I thought you were talking about your car.
Yeah, well, I took my car to the drag race meetings as well. And although it wasn't as fast as the souped up big V8s that are turbocharged and all, the funny cars, they're really quick. I knew I wasn't going to win, so to make it interesting, I'd get on the start line and set off in reverse, backwards. They'd say, hey, what? And I was seeing a James Bond film where he comes across a single track road over a bridge and the enemy's coming for him shooting guns. So he puts it in reverse and his head's back and does a 180-degree slide turn and all in one smooth motion. So with an automatic, which the V8 American cars are automatics, you can go from reverse, tweak the steering wheel, big V8 engine at the front, heavy, it swings the front round in a side slide, and when you get to 180 degrees, meanwhile you flick it from reverse to drive and put your foot down again and just carry on accelerating. You can do a smooth transition. So I used to, it had a limited slip differential, so both wheels on when you revved the engine. So it was like riding a motorbike, speedway bike, drifts out the back end. I could drift this in corners. I went all around the Three Sisters, which is a Type karting track. I wheelied around it first, and then I took my Corvette on it and drifted it around all the corners. So one summer's evening, the sun shining, I took it for a spin over the moors. I just filled the tank up.
Didn't you have? I'm pretty sure you told me once you had Lindsay, your first wife, stood
Oh,
out the sunroof of this car.
It's a T-top, so you can take the roofs off, and she stood on the seat with her bum against the roof, so you torso and the shoulders and head above in the wind, holding the video camera with one hand, which is a bulky affair.
What year was this then?
85. We got married in 85. It was the year I got married. I've got the video still. And I was wanted to race when these Moorland Roads while she was up there videoing, but she was kept jumping down into the car. I said, "Get up there, woman, get up there, get it filmed." And she said, "That's again." And she's constant draw of scream. I said, "Shut up, woman, get her." Anyway, the camera was up in the sky and over the moors and everywhere. She didn't film anything. I'm playing it back now. I can't believe how chauvinistic I was about telling her to get the job done when she was literally fearing her life.
You'd have been better off taping the camera onto the top of the car or something, wouldn't you? In a fixed position.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I filled the car up with fuel and I was going up towards shore, and this motorbike shot past me. I was going up past shore where I had that crash with the Mini. I turned right up Buxton's Road, and it's 30 limit at this bottom, but this motorbike, which was an LC350 water-cooled Yamaha, which was like a good nimble bike, quite pretty quick. And it went up Buxton's Road, which is a series of climbs and hills. And I was catching him up. We got to Grange Bar and turned left down to Denshaw. There's a straight there. I accelerated and went past him on the straight, and there was a bleed all the way down to Denshaw. But then at Denshaw, you've got Crossroads junction, and it's a 30 limit. And we've been doing that up 100 miles an hour. But I slowed down to about 50, looking for cars that might be pulling out. This bike went zoom past me at full throttle. I thought that was a stupid thing to do at Crossroads. The car had pulled out, it'd have been a goner. But after the Crossroads, I booted it, started climbing the hill. And I was gaining on him. And partway up the hill, there's a left hand there, just a slight left hand bend, but there's a slight dip in the road, which when you come out of it, you get a little bit less weight on the road. And being a left hand bend, the back end lost traction and started to slide to the right. So I instinctively steered into the slide to like you would do if you were drifting. But when it came down with extra G-forces after it was lifted, it gripped tremendously, which put me into a right-hand spin. And the road was going that way, and I was going that way. And I did a 180-degree turn backwards before I impacted the dry stone wall, which is earth-retaining, holding up the field and the haymaking field above. And that catapulted the car into a cartwheel. And I had the roof off because it was a nice sunny evening. I saw blue sky, dirt, dust, blue, dirt, 3 times. So it must have been 3 cartwheels. And it landed on the edge of the road in a right state. And I was worried, oh my God, I've been racing, the engine's red hot, I've got a full tank of fuel, it's got all this damage, it's going to explode. And instant it stopped, I'd released my seat belt with this and took my key out of the ignition, out the door and run across the road thinking it's going to be. And I turned round and it hadn't burst into flames. Oh, what a mess. The bodywork was all gone. Fiberglass gone. The wings had gone. The headlamps had gone. Everything had been broken and splintered, and it was strewn all over the road. And this bike must have saw it in its wing mirror. It came down the road and said, "Are you all right, mate?" I'm just stood there. Not a scratch on me. Not a whiplash neck, not a broken fingernail, nothing. And I was worried about, well, looks bad, this is police come. So I started picking up all the bits of like the front wing, well that goes in that there on that wheel, and I got the other wing and I brought some bits and pieces and picked the headlamps back up and tried to make it less of an impact. And then I noticed the dry stone wall. All the copings were missing off the top. So I looked over the wall and they'd been knocked into the haymaking grass about 100 feet up the field. So I spent the next 10 minutes running up and down the field, throwing all these big coping stones back down towards the wall so it looked like there had been less of an impact. And,
Oh God.
eventually a police car did come. And anybody injured? No. Any other third party? No. Right, I called a breakdown truck then. So a breakdown truck came back an hour later and took us about 2 hours to drag it. Oh, there was only one wheel left on the car. The back left wheel was underneath the car, which could have been the drive shaft. It was a transverse leaf spring. It's a parallelogram, and the drive shaft forms the upper strut of the parallelogram, independent suspension. And it could have been the circlet that had worn in the differential and the top leaf member of the parallelogram that caused the car to go into the spin, or it could have been pulled out when it landed on there, when it gripped. So the other 3 tyres had been ripped off the rims. The wheels were in place and they were pointed in different directions, but they were on. It was just the one wheel that was underneath. So the pickup breakdown truck come, and he was aghast as to see that no one had been killed. All the first people that were on the scene were 3 fishermen. They were fishing in a lodge in a reservoir higher up the road, and they heard this tremendous crash. They thought an aircraft had crash landed. And they came running over the fields and saw me standing there, sort of throwing stones down the hillside and picking up bits of wreckage. Are you alright, mate? We thought there'd been a plane crash, he said. So, that was lucky, wasn't it? No injuries.
Very lucky.
Oh, when the insurance assessor came, because I made a claim on insurance, and he went to look at the car to see that everything was legal. He was measuring the depth of the tread and the tyres. It had all new tyres on it. It had all the engine chrome plated. It had all the best. It was my pride and joy. Well looked after. And then he said, "Where's the bonnet?" And no one had even noticed that. The bonnet's 8 foot long, and no one had noticed the bonnet had gone. That's how bad it looked. So I said, I don't know where the bonnet is, but I was curious. So I went back next day to the crash site, and I did a search of the fields in the long mowing grass, looking for the bonnet. Couldn't find it anywhere. Bigger and bigger. And then I went to the other field on the other side of the road, on the inside of the bend, where you wouldn't expect to be any. And about 150 yards away, there's a drainage gully about 10 feet deep, and the grass just goes into it, and it's all good. I found the bonnet down there, not a scratch on it. It must have been detached from its hinges while it was spinning on a cartwheel and caught the air and flew off like a frisbee and landed in the field.
Trying to imagine that at you. Imagine that hit somebody.
Well, I got to thinking afterwards, while I was waiting for the pickup truck.
Should have kept it.
Supposing a family car with mother and father and 3 children in it had been coming down the road, whilst my car was doing 100 mile an hour backwards, spinning up across I could have killed or wiped out a whole family. So since that day, I've always been responsible, nice and steady driver. I've had my works van.
How old was you when that happened?
30, 31. I'll have to check my diaries. It was short after we'd been married. I got married at 30 in 1985. So.
Because you got married to your first wife in 1985.
A 30-year-old.
And I was born in 1993, 8 years after your first marriage, but to your second wife.
my first wife, out of the blue, without any reason, just came, I'm leaving you. What? What for? You know? Anyway, she just left. And I want this, and I want that, and I want half the value of your car, and I want half of that. I still had the car when she left, because she wanted me to half the value of the car. So it must have been, she left me before I wrote it off. And she wanted to claim everything. So I'd just bought a brand new Maunders home as an investment, because prices were going up fast. So I let her move in, and she moved in with her boyfriend I knew nothing about. So she must have been having it there, just come out and say, I'm leaving. And it was shortly after that, within 6 months, it was my birthday. It was my 27th birthday party. Not my 37th. My 37th birthday. I was at Jojo's Tram Tracks Scandals, the nightclub, but it's not there anymore, with my friends, about 4 or 5 friends. And there was a group of girls in there that knew some of these friends. One of them I knew, Tracy Spence. And there was another one called Joanne Whited there. And said, well, it's my birthday. And I'd just been moved into the farmhouse this year. I'd just got the jacuzzi in and filled it full of cold water to test it for leaks. And it hadn't been, the heating wasn't connected up. So we went back to our house for some more home brew, because I was doing a tremendous beer at the time. And I said, come and have a look at this. And I put the underwater lighting on, it was all crystal clear. And then they decided between them that I should christen the jacuzzi, and they threw me in with my suit on, my phone, my wallet.
You had a phone on you in that in 19...
no, hang on. What did I have?
19...
No, it wasn't a phone.
80...
It was my wallet that got wet through, my clothes, my wallet, and my watch. What wasn't a watchproof, watch, wallet, and all, you know, not a phone. So anyway, we had a big log fire burning away in the lounge to get warmed and dried up after being. But it wasn't long before everyone had been thrown in the jacuzzi, because we were all a bit well oiled. So that's the night I met your mum. Yeah. So we soon got together, and you were conceived very, very quite quickly, really. So she moved in the farmhouse with us. So that was my birthday in April, and your mum had just had her birthday a month before mine in March, and you were born on the
following March.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So that was 11 months after us meeting, you were born.
So I was conceived in the first 3 months of your relationship.
Yeah.
God damn. Talk about doing it quick.
Well, I'd always wanted a big family, and I think one of the things with my first wife, Lindsay, is that she got pregnant as soon as we set a date for the wedding. I got her pregnant straight away, and so she was 3 months by the time we walked up the aisle. It didn't show, but she had an ectopic pregnancy, lost the baby, and then the year after she got pregnant again, and she had another ectopic pregnancy, had the other fallopian tube removed, and then we tried for IVF, which was a new thing, which was a bit hit and miss. I had to pay privately. We had 5 attempts at IVF, and she got pregnant with Charlotte, and Charlotte got septicemia, blood disease, and died at 10 days old. So
how did you feel about that?
I was more grief-struck than I ever remember any time in my life, because I'd always planned on having 6 kids, big family, got a big house, and we feel like we had joyous kids and give them a good time on the farm and growing up. But I've settled for 2. That's been enough. 2 boys.
I've always wanted to have a big family, you know. But recently, over the last few years,
global warming and all that.
I'm just thinking maybe it's not the most responsible thing to do.
Well, maybe global warming is overrated, and maybe the human race will survive and survive like Noah's Ark. Every species could be DNA saved, preserved.
I
And
think that will be
regenerated.
I think that will be the case. If I'm being honest,
Yeah.
I think the human race will
There's
preserve
so many
DNA.
species becoming extinct now. and
200 a day.
They're gone forever.
200 a day.
I thought it was 100 a day, but maybe it's kept accelerating. They're not animals that we love. They're species of plants and species of bacteria and species of insects and species of all sorts of things that are becoming extinct because of global warming.
Shark populations have declined by 95% in the last 30 years.
That's with overfishing, yeah. Just cutting the fins off and throwing them back so they can't swim and they starve to death.
Oh, they suffocate.
Suffocate, yeah.
Anyway, let's continue with your stories because you've got a lot to get through yet, and there's going to be many more podcasts with me talking about climate change on it. But for this first one, I want to get your story, not my story.
Well, you'd have to read my autobiography, which I could email to anyone that wants it. So if anybody watches this, send me an email. ThorpeCon.
See, what we need to do is we need to put your autobiography online or on Kindle and put it somewhere people can find it and access it straight away. So we've not actually done that yet, but
And if they find it remotely interesting or amusing, then I'm asking that they make a small donation to the charity, the Air Ambulance charity, because it is run entirely on charity.
Now, why do you want the Air Ambulance charity?
Because the Air Ambulance is what saved my life. If the 999 ambulance had been there first and took me to the nearest hospital, i.e. Lancaster and the Black Knights, they don't have the same extreme trauma unit at Lancaster as they do at Preston. And they've only got the helicopter landing pad at Preston. So the helicopter took me to Preston. And the paramedics managed to stabilise me. It took them half an hour before they could move me on the ground because I got internal bleeding. And my back was broken.
Do you want to tell us how this actually happened? How did you actually get into this kind of mess with this guy? Because you started the story with this, but tell me how you actually ended up in this situation. Because you've had a lot of experience skydiving, so
yeah, I
don't know how you managed to.
I had 310 jumps in over a 12-year period, which is not a lot when you consider the other skydivers over 60 in that group. They got anything from 5 to 10 to 20,000 jumps in. They've been jumping all their lives, obviously, and they've been professional tandem instructors and coaches and worked in the industry. I was just a fun-time hobby jumper, and I had a full-time job to work at, and then we're often got weather reasons why you can't jump, so I didn't jump as much. And then the drop zone had been shut with the COVID-19 because you can't social distance on a plane, and it's been almost a year since I had my last jump, so I went in 5th of June 2021, and the first jump's got to be a solo jump just to get your knees in the breeze, so you get used to falling, because the most dangerous thing in the sky is when a skydiver, so they put you on your own stand. I mean, the greatest fun is jumping with other people, making formations and doing daft things and doing displays, which the more I did, the better it got, anyway. The first one to exit the plane has to pull the canopy at the lowest altitude, so other jumpers can't fall into the canopy, and each successive jumper deploys the canopy at higher and higher altitudes, and the last jumpers out are the tandem jumps, because they have to pull their canopies out at 5,000 feet, not 3,000 where I did. So I was furthest from the drop zone, lowest by the time I got to the drop zone. I should have landed in the field before, but shoulda, woulda, coulda. It doesn't work, does it? I thought I've never missed the Black Knights drop zone. I always land. It's a big field, and it was a left-hand landing pattern, but I was 90 degrees to turn right into the wind. So I tried to do a 270 left-hand turn, which you lose altitude quickly. I was too low. By the time I realised the ground was coming up too fast, I'd let go of both my toddles to get a straight level canopy to create lift, but that didn't work. I'd been falling too quickly, and the last 100 feet just went like that, like a ton of bricks into the ground. Feet first, feet together, knees bent, absorb the impact, and I was conscious and lit all the way through. I know why it happened, I know how it happened, and I can recite everything. First thing I felt was my heels ramming into my buttocks with a tremendous force. And just as a quick explanation, like a joke I say, but like a Tom and Jerry comedy cartoon, if I could have stood up, I'd have been a foot shorter, and my spine would have been sticking out my arsehole, because the bottom three lumbar,
I always
1,
get a
2,
bit
and 3
cringy when I hear these kinds of.
impacted through the base of my pelvic floor.
So what injuries did you sustain from this then?
Well, my spine, as the surgeon said, had been squished, squashed and stretched, but not severed, because my left leg was like a lead weight. It was numb. I couldn't move it. It was paralysed. But there was 1 inch on the top of my left foot where I could get a feel on the skin. So he said, your nerve is not severed. It will grow back. It'll be 12 months before you can walk again, but he will recover to some degree. It's just been 12 months this last week.
So what was that experience like for you when that happened to you, and how did you feel about it? And
well, when I landed, I was in an impossible position. My legs were both out in front of me, and my arms were both out in front of me, and my face was on the floor, on its side. I was conscious and breathing and talking, but I couldn't move. And the pain, serious.
Worse than when you was 11 and you crashed your go-kart?
Yeah, it was. I've had a lot of broken bones and they do hurt. This was the far more serious. I knew it was serious. I knew I'd broken my pelvis, and I knew I'd probably broken my femur. I had the CT scans, which look absolutely amazing. My femur was shattered into 12 pieces.
God damn.
My bottom 3, my sacrum, which is the hardest bone at the base of your spine, was broken. The left hip was broken. Both my pelvis sides are broken. I've got steel plates, bottom on the outside and on the inside of my pelvis. I've got a bolt across from my right hip to my left hip, running through my abdomen. And then I've got 2 scaffolding poles screwed and plated to my bottom 3 spines. Lumbar 2, 3 and 4.
You told me that when you was going in for the surgery, they asked you to sign a do not resuscitate form.
Yeah.
So what happened? Tell us about that.
Well, I knew this because I had to sign one for my mother when they kept taking her to hospital and she was dying. They resuscitated her, and it's when you're expected not to make it, and it's more humane to let a person die. You can sign a do not resuscitate form. I think the thing is they didn't think they were going to be successful on the surgery, and I would have been passed away and could not resuscitate me because my injuries were so severe. But I said, I'm not signing that. I'm not a quitter. I'm going to fight. I'm fit and healthy. I'm going to get better. I'm going to beat this. And I was determined right through the whole of the year. Physio thought I was amazing. I was the favourite patient. I did every exercise I could and got myself going. And here I am.
That mental attitude might have saved your life.
My physical fitness could have saved my life. My polio probably saved my life. Saved me from me with PDA, and it also made me go to the gym and get super fit with the superstars. And then when I couldn't go to the gym, I was already hooked on fitness, and I started swimming. For the last 35 years, I've swum 50 laps a day, every day, until COVID shut the pools. So my cardiovascular and fitness level is immense, really. And that's what probably saved my life. And I couldn't wait to get back swimming. It was you and Connor took me in the first swim in October.
You're very lucky to be sat here now. With all the things that you've been through and with your most recent accident, you're very lucky to be here now. And I, being your son, I am very grateful that you are here now and that we can have these conversations and I can call you and we can talk and I can see you. Because it could have just as easily been that you'd died on that day.
Yeah.
Either in the field.
In the field, they said we're losing him. I heard him say that. And the ambulance wasn't arriving, so they called what they call a floating ambulance, one that's in the vicinity. They called for that, and then they called for the air ambulance. And all three arrived at the same time. Thank God it was the air ambulance that took me to Preston. But to stabilise me on the ground, I thought I was dying. I had a very strange experience.
What was that? What did you experience?
It was being somewhere else. And I'd been there before. There was very, very vivid colours and loud, like an electronic synthesizer, deep notes, powerful, I could hear. And I could hear people talking, and I could talk back to them. And I heard Sharon, Paul Yeoman's wife, she's a nurse, and she was I said, "Oh, Sharon, it's good to hear your voice, I recognise." And then, suddenly, this tremendous pain just went. Wow, I've not felt this good in years. That might have been some sort of barbiturate, something or
There's a theory that when you're near-death experience, your brain produces chemicals.
Yeah, but the stranger thing is that I was experienced with these bright colours and these loud noises and hear people talking. I knew I'd been there before because I knew what was coming next. I knew what people were going to say, and then they said it. I knew what sounds I was going to hear, and then they heard it. It was like watching a recording. I'd lived and experienced those noises and sounds and things before. I couldn't see because my head was still on the floor and it moved. I still had my harness on and my parachute canopy on the back, and the canopy was all around me. My rig was still on my back, and they hadn't managed to stabilise me. And I thought I was dying. I really did. Thought, this is too strange to be true. This was what it must be like to die. And I knew I'd been there before, and it was happening again.
When had you been there before?
I must have been there before because I knew exactly what was going to happen next. It was like watching a video or a recording. It'll be one of the 22 other times when I was expecting to die, won't it? So.
Is that the closest time you've ever been to death?
Yeah. No. I thought I was going to die when I had endocarditis in Fairfield Hospital 2 months after my accident. Endocarditis is a blood infection, bacterial infection of the blood, and it attacks the valves of the heart. I've already got a metallic mitral valve implant, and I could see from a TOE scan very clearly images of the inside of my heart, and I could see the ring stitched on the inside of the left ventricle. I could see the 2 semicircular flaps moving up and down, opening, letting the blood through. I could even see the stitching where it was stitched to the side of the heart. It was an amazingly clear picture from this scan. And I could also see what growths of bacteria, we call it vegetative growths. And they're about the size of a small peas, maybe 5 millimeters diameter, attached to the ring, attached to the flaps. I didn't like the look of them. And put these antibacterial infusions that was killing the bacteria in my blood. I said, will they be removed? No, they won't be removed. The consultant surgeon said, it's too risky to remove them. But they will be calcified and they'll be sterile. So they will remain, and they're there now. So if one did come detached and it got into my bloodstream, if it entered my carotid artery or my brain, it would cause a stroke, probably death. If it entered my lungs, pulmonary, that's instant death. And if it entered the cardio, the heart, blood circulation, it would cause a heart attack.
Anywhere it enters is going to be.
No, it could enter into your foot or your leg, but if it went to your heart, your lungs, your brain, it's going to be fatal. So I was waiting for one of them to break off. Another ancient moment was when the pharmaceutical companies had run out of supplies of the antibacterial infusion fluids. And there were 8 of them every day. One of them it took 3 hours to administer, a 3 hour period. And it was every day, day and night. I had more infusions injected into my bloodstream each day than what I got blood in my body. And I was peeing for England. I was filling 12 to 15 bottles, lead bottles of urine throughout the day and night, every day. And these bottles are made of paper mache. And they're a bit thin in places and they leak, and some of them even got holes in them. There was one night where I had 3 consecutive leaks, and you can't tell because you sat in the bed and your legs normally can't feel it anyway. And I'm sat in a pool of piss, and it's so embarrassing. The nurse says, come on, my darling, come on, we'll help you. And they have to do a bed bath and roll you over and put you through clean sheets on 3 times in one night.
You got a plastic one next, didn't you?
Well, there's a plastic mattress underneath, which is computer controlled, and it stops you getting bed sores, inflates different cells, and just distributes it out your bloodstream. But getting on and off that bedpan's a pain when you're paralysed. They've got to roll you over, stick the bedpan on it, roll your back on it, and all your weight is pushing your bum cheeks together, and you're constipated, and it's bloody hard work.
So something else you've always told me from when I was young.
Do you want me to tell you about this?
One more thing. Something else I want to hear about is you wheelies. You held the world record for the longest
continuous
motorcycle
wheeling.
That's right.
Yeah, well, before that record, it was a stunt rider called Dave Taylor from Kent.
We've passed an hour now, by the way.
And he went to the Ironman TT circuit. And I went to the Ironman every year. I've been about 20 times. But Dave Taylor was going to wheel around it. And I had already started wheeling and perfected the art of it through trials riding, and then progressed to motocrosses and was doing displays. But he did a 6 1/4 stint without putting the front wheel down, and he said that is the world record for the longest ever motorcycle wheeling. And then Sean District Motorbike Club were always doing charity runs to raise money for charities to give motorbikes a good name. And one girl, she was called Sue, she said, I know what we can do. Dave Smith can get the new world longest wheelie record. So that was it, I had to do it.
So it wasn't even your idea then?
That wasn't even my idea, no. And I had to get an electric motor on the front wheel to keep it turning. because I could wheelie with my rear footrests, the extra brake handle, which was another clutch lever for the rear brake, and I had a gear change pedal, so I could change gear, accelerate and brake, go up the gear, and down the gears. I could pull a wheelie at 80 mile an hour and go down through the box, leaning back, using the brakes, and slow down to 10 mile an hour. The front wheel still going 80 mile an hour. It's like amazing gyroscopic forces. But during the 35, 40 minutes I took me to the world record, the front wheel would stop, and there's a hairpin bend at Aintree Road Race Circuit, and I couldn't get around the bend, that wheel turning. So I had to improvise and got a windscreen wiper motor from the scrapyard and put it on the front wheel and got it to keep it turning from the alternator and a battery and a rectifier to make it from AC to DC and insulate it, because the frame was negative earth AC and there was a DC motor. But I've got a lot of experience with electrics, so I can figure it all out, and mechanics and improvising. And it's, if you can, the old adage, if you can conceive it and believe it, you can achieve it. So that's what I did. Smashed the world record. Did 9 continuous laps of Aintree. 18 miles. Dennis Hussey was a Daily Mirror newspaper photographer. He came to see me. We went to Slattex Industrial Estate and I did some wheelies for him. And I did one where I stood on the seat on one leg. And it looked like a flying ballerina. And that picture got printed in the Times. A friend was working in Dubai, he sent me a copy, posted it to me. Another friend was working in Canberra, he sent me a copy from Canberra. My friend in California sent me a copy from California. Mum and Dad were in Guernsey, they sent me a copy from there. I was in every issue, and it was a half-page picture of me doing a wheelie on one leg on the seat. And it was panned, so all the background was blurred. It looked like I was going like a hell of a speed, but I was actually only doing about 30 to 40 mile an hour. And it must have been in a picture library, and it was used by all the newspapers, not just the Daily Mirror.
So tell you what we're going to do at some point in the near future. We're going to upload all of your pictures onto your own personal WikiLeaks website. And we're also going to upload your autobiography online as well. And then
doors open. The blinds have just gone out.
Well, listen,
That's because Dawn's opened the front door.
Listen, what we're going to do, Dad, is we're going to get all your pictures and your autobiography, and we're going to put it on Wikipedia, and we're going to put it in the link down below to this YouTube video, so anyone that's watching this video in the future will be able to just look in the description, see the link, and they'll be able to click on it, and they'll find your autobiography and all of your pictures.
Well, I would like the autobiography to be read by as many people as possible, because it is amusing and interesting story. And also, I would like people to volunteer whatever sum they want, be it £1 or anything. If 1,000 people read it, it'd be £1,000 for the charity, wouldn't it?
The air ambulance service that saved your life.
Looking out this lounge window here, a couple of weeks ago, the air ambulance service was right over these trees, and it landed on Lees Road, 100 yards away. There was an e-biker been knocked off his bike, and it warranted the air ambulance to come and save his life. Must have been critical. That's the service they provide.
It's an important service, isn't it? Saving lives all day long.
It's not NHS funded, it's private, it's charity funded.
So like I said, the link, if you want to see the link to your autobiography and this charity, you'll see it down below in the description below this video.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Very important thing to you, isn't it?
Right. Sailing. You're interested in sailing. You've got your, what have you got? Sailing qualifications?
Yeah, so I'm a
Dinghy sailor.
Right, so it came around
on the
because
reservoir.
this came around because I'm obviously a climate change activist now, and I wanted my original goal was I want to travel to see the whole world, right? But how do you see the whole world?
For free.
How do you see the whole? It's not free. How
It
do
is. The wind's free.
yeah, maintaining a sailing boat isn't free. How do you see the whole world without emitting any carbon emissions? And it was you who gave me the idea. You went, Josh, why didn't you learn to sail and sail around the world? And I stopped for a second and I thought,
Yeah, well, that's what my dad's ambition was.
"Hmm,
Sir Francis Chichester had sailed round the world in the 1960s, and he was knighted by the Queen. He was also quite an adventurer. He did other things as well, but he sailed around the world non-stop, solo, which is not really what you want to do. You want to stop and see places, don't you? So my dad got the idea he wanted to sail, so we went on a holiday on Norfolk Broads and hired a yacht. It's not an ocean-going yacht; it's inland waterways. But there's some, it's like being on the sea. Some you can't see the land, but it had a collapsible mast, so we could go under the roads, on the bridges, and we had a week sailing there. My mum won a competition to get a dinghy sailing qualification at Holyhead Harbour, and that's how I got interested. She said there's a club called the Ocean Youth Club, where people under 21 can go and get sailing experiences. So joined, and we sailed from Holyhead in Anglesey, round Anglesey, through the Minion Straits, and then we went over to the Isle of Man and back, then we went over to Ireland and back, and as I got more and more experienced, and then I decided there's once a year, then a 6-week trip adventure sailing. So I enrolled for that and got on it, and we were going to sail down the coast of Ireland, down round the tip of England to France, and the first day sailing we set off, and it was a choppy south southerly wind, and we were heading south, so we had to tack all the way to the wind. The boat's 72 feet long, it's a 72 foot mast, it's got 2 masts, 15 berth, there's 12 crew, a captain and 2 first mates. They're experienced. All the rest are people with limited experience. And we were divided into a starboard and a port watch, 4 hours on, 4 hours off, 24 hours a day, sailing the boat. And the boat was crashing through these waves, and we were tacking, and we only got to south of Ireland, and we pulled into a bay at Cork and sheltered for the night, and then we set off. And the next day it was worse. I thought the hull was going to split. We were riding up a 15-foot wave, and it went down, but the distance between the waves must have been 70 feet because the yacht was 70 foot long, and it just crashed as the next upcoming, and it went with such a smack. I thought the hull was going to split, and I was so seasick. I went down to the toilet, and as soon as I went below decks, does your head in, because you've got to keep your eye on the horizon. And I vomited down the toilet, and it come up like brown water. And then I had my pee, and that came out exactly the same brown water from both ends. Can you imagine what was going on inside my gut? I was ill. I couldn't eat a thing. So we got to Brest in northern France, sheltered there, and the next day we set off across the Bay of Biscay, over 1,000 miles to the northwest tip of Spain, to Corunna. And the storm was worse. It was a force 10 storm. That's the top force. And there weren't waves. It took us 10 days to get to as far as Corunna. We were way behind schedule because we were tacking into wind. And to stabilise the boat into wind, we got the boom at close hold to port, and we've got the jib.
What does that mean?
Close hold is when you winch them in so you can tack into the wind. When you're running, it's when the sails are out at 90 degrees to catch the wind. It goes close hold is when they're pulled in, so you can point the bow into wind at an angle. And there's a thing called luffing with the sails. If you catch the wind just at the right angle, and if you go too far into wind, then some wind goes at the back of the sails and starts luffing. So you've got to judge that's part of this. The skill of the helmsman. When we learned how to sail, I was on the helm. We all took turns on the helm. We had to do 24 hours a day. So it took us 8 days to cross the Bay of Biscay in a force 10 storm, and we had the boom at close hold from the port, and the jib winched from the starboard. So that one sail's that way and the one's this way. That keeps the nose into wind. You're not really making any progress, but you're keeping it into wind to ride the storm. That's why it took us 8 days to get across the Bay of Biscay, and I couldn't keep anything down. I was having to get up every 4 hours and put my waterproofs on. We had the harness with 2 lines with carabiners we had to be hooked on at all times. So when you're moving along the deck and you're hooked onto a rail, you've got to put your next hook on that rail before you unhook this one, so you don't get man overboard, because you were swept off your feet. The water was as high as the mast.
What were these waves like?
They weren't waves, they were humps and hollows. It was a massive pile of water, and you'd be half, and it'd be as high as a 70-foot mast, and then it'd just go, and there'd be a hole there, and the boat seemed to stabilise halfway between the humps and the hollows, and then they changed from a hump to a hollow so fast that there'd be a great big mass of water, hundreds of tons of water, left in mid-air, and the wind at force 10 storm blew it sideways like a driving rain, hitting you like bullets. This is what force 10 storms like in the Bay of Biscay is notoriously bad. And I wanted to get off. And it's 300 miles away, the land. Oh, God. And one morning, we had to take turns at cooking as well in the galley. Someone had cooked some porridge with long life milk with some sugar in it, and it tasted delicious. I was starving. Next minute, I'll come back up. I didn't keep anything down. I wanted to get off that boat so bad. It was the worst experience. It was worse. It was a tiredness, lack of energy, lack of sleep, lack of everything, run down, drained feeling. It was worse than any broken bones I had up to that point. And we pulled in at Corona.
This is after how many days, say?
10 days.
10 days of that kind of torture?
Yeah. I'd lost a lot of weight, I hadn't eaten, I hadn't shaved, I hadn't washed. I didn't have a suitcase. I had bin liner bags, because you can't take a suitcase on a boat. It has to be a kit bag of some sort. And I took my wetsuit. I had visions of going to these islands, like Polynesian islands with girls in grass skirts and blue lagoons, and I was so much looking forward to this holiday to the Azores and the Canaries, but I never got there because I didn't get back on that bloody boat for anything. No way would I get back on that boat. Nothing. There's one of the mates said, there's one of the captain's mates, his first mate or second mate, it's not a mate, it's a friend, it's a mate, it's a position as a sailor. Said there is a ferry that goes from Bilbao to Southampton. So Bilbao is 150 miles on the coast, so that's the plan to get home. So I got off the boat, said goodbye, and go home. That was another adventure then getting home. That's another story in itself, but that's the sailing part of it.
Tell us the rest of it.
Right. I found a railway station, and
Don't rush it. Take your
there
time.
was a map on the wall, and it showed the coastline north of Spain, 150 miles from Corunna to Bilbao. So I made a note, I drew a little map, and I drew a little railway line, and I put all the stops that were marked on the map, so I knew which towns I was going. So when I got on the train, I know where I was going to get off at the next stop. A bit like London Underground, you know, when the stops coming off the next one. So then I went to the ticket office and said, "Read ticket from here to," and they come out with a load of Spanish. Now not Bilbao, Corunna is an industrial town. Not a holiday resort. Nobody speaks any